Welcome to the Photofocus Q&A show. We have episode 5 for July 2022. This will be going out on July 28th. My name is Ron Pepper. I'm here with Rob Moroto, as always. How's it going, Rob?
Hey, not doing too bad. It's a little hot up here, but it's a first.
Well, we're recording late, as you and I usually do. So maybe cooling off, and I think we both have a beverage in front of us this time since it's 9 a.m. our time.
Well,
9 p.m. our time.
Yeah. I've got 3 kids, but I still haven't been able to start drinking that early.
I just got off vacation, so I might have had something that early. I'm not quite sure. But we're back from a little vacation and in the hot seat to record the Q&A show. We have a few questions that are from behind the camera, how to set shutter speed and choose aperture, shutter, etc. And then we'll talk a little bit also about some post-processing options that someone asked that was rather interesting to compare.
Yep.
So, but first,
But before we get into that, you know what we have to do? We have to talk about Tamron, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Tamron is our sponsor for the Q&A show, our main sponsor.
And it's funny. They've come out with a all-in-one zoom, and it's perfect for right now because, well, geez, let's face it, everyone's on vacation anyway, so you might as well just take a zoom, because who has time to change lenses when you got kids running around already? But they got this really cool one. It is a 28 to 200. Like, that's a huge range, but it starts off at it's a 2.8 to 5.6, and it's for the Sony full frame mirrorless cameras. So anyone that's lucky enough to get the new Sony, what is it, the A7 IV or A?
I can't keep them straight. I'll mess it up.
No, same here. But it's a fantastic camera. I've seen a bunch of video footage taken from them, and it's just amazing. But it'd be great for something like that for anyone who has a Sony, because it starts off at f2.8 at 28 mils, which is amazing.
That's a big deal. I think I had a Tamron, and it probably was a 28 to 200, and this was a long time ago. It was APS-C, Nikon, or whatever. But yeah, I think it started from 3.6 aperture, so you had a whole. Yeah, it's a big difference,
right?
And all of those super zooms are going to have that f-stop range, but this one, goes all the way to 2.8.
Because I've never seen a super zoom that has that starts at 2.8. Like, looking at my Canon L lenses, yes, you can get a 2.8 to 70, and then they got a 70 to 200. That's a 2.8, but you don't have a 28 to 200 that can do that. So to get something like this, that's quite amazing. And let's face it, this isn't the top end line, right? This is like your consumer prosumer level. So. Yeah, which I remember walking around Italy with it might have been the Tamron then at the time, and I just left it on my camera the whole time because, like you said, the kids or whoever, I think one kid, I guess. But I don't know about you, but on vacation, I'm always the one lagging behind to shoot photos, and everybody's walking ahead on the hike. I'm sure every photographer knows this, right? Where you're the one holding everybody up and being annoying and taking all this time. But at least we're not changing lenses, and you can just grab and go the one body, one lens. It's great for that. Right, and it's absolutely perfect. And let's face it, that's going to be a whole lot better than getting it on your iPhone. So, yeah, anybody out there looking for a great vacation zoom lens, check out the Tamron 28 to 200 mil. It's a 2.8 to 5.6, and you can get that at HTTPS. Tamron USA.com/products/lenses/A7. Yeah, it's all in the show notes. Okay, so there's no point rattling that off.
You're so old fashioned, Rob. You say HTTPS and all that,
right? I listened to this other podcast where they always talk about their website, and they always say wobbly dot. And I thought that's fantastic. It's cute.
Are they Australian or Canadian or something?
No, they're British.
Oh, wobbly. All right. I
know, right? But it's good.
If you're new to the show, photofocus.com/questions. You can send us questions here. And I'll say right off the top, nobody seems to be taking me up on the send me the audio questions. Just once, we've had a few scattered about on the previous shows, but it's easy. Just pick up your smartphone and go to the voice memo, record something, and then use a little send, share, tap on the share icon and email it, questions@photofocus.com. It's easy, and you can hear yourself on here. We'll play your question, get a better idea, better feel. And do those ways of sending us questions. Again, with text, you can always just email at the same place. And let's just pop into our first question. And because Rob Moroto and Ron Pepper have a way of talking all day. It's become one of my one of my catchphrases is we could talk all day. So, hey, I put these in order in a certain way on purpose because they kind of fold in. Because the first one came from basically I took several questions and put them into one. So this comes from various places.
Mm-hmm. Not just a person called Various, no.
Yeah, that's the new name in some other country. I don't know. But anyways, I made the question out of several people's questions. So what they're asking is the best way to choose your shutter speed. And then the examples that I got included birds and wildlife, air shows, that's pretty specific, right?
Yeah.
And then sports, which is very general. So we have a lot of kind of options to talk about how to choose the best shutter speed, and maybe we'll even throw in our own situations. But let's take it from right there and just say birds.
Well, that's a good one.
Have you shot birds much in your life?
You know what? I do, and it's funny. I actually have this gorgeous plant. I think it's a rose bush or something. It's got flowers, and we get hummingbirds. Now, for a hummingbird, you need to actually shoot it quite quick to be able to get those wings in like perfectly still. I shoot those things at around 1/2000th of a second, and it's still not fast enough. And so one thing that I talked to a local photographer here who specializes in shooting actually hummingbirds. And what he does is he's got a huge strobe that goes off, and he shoots it at 1/200th of a second. But it's a strobe that is so fast that it stops the motion. So if you're using the strobe, then 1/200th of a second is more than enough to catch a hummingbird. But if you're doing it straight shutter, even at 1/2000th of a second, it wasn't fast enough. And then I see
with a hummingbird, and I'll fold this into one of the sports that I always like to use as an example is motorsports. So like with the hummingbird and its wings and a race car and its wheels, you don't necessarily want to stop the action. You might want, and I think with the hummingbird it depends. You might want the bird to be sharp, but the wings to be in motion.
Yeah.
But to compare it to the car, you want the car to be super sharp, but you want the wheels to be fully in motion. So it looks weird when they're stop motion, the wheels.
Well, you're right. And then those shots where you need that background to be slightly blurry. You want that motion blur there to show that the car is in motion. You don't want to look like there's a car that's just parked on the track.
Right. That's what would, right, with the background and the wheels, you would make it look like it's parked in the. Is that true? Yeah, that would, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
So the answer basic answer to the shutter speed is going to usually be somewhere in the middle. Like if you're panning the camera with the car, you might just be at like say 1/60th, 1/25th of a second or so, where to be able to have the sharp car, but the wheels are moving so fast that those should still be blurry. I'm just throwing out a guess because I don't shoot motorsports really, but I have tried it and it's been a long time.
Here's an interesting one for you. Okay, so I have a friend, Amy. God, I wish I could remember his last name. I think it's like Amy Rehal. I met. I say friend. I think everyone's a friend. Thanks to Facebook, everyone's a friend if you just like them, right? Him and I go back probably around. Oh, geez, I met him back in 2002. But he shot cars. And one thing that he told me was that when he shoots a car, one of the things that they do is they would put imagine a pole sticking out the front of the car, and you have your camera set on that. And then what they do is they get behind the car is in neutral, and they push the car, and the shutter speed is like 1/30th or 1/10th of a second, and they're actually pushing the car. But because of the way that they're doing it, all the background's getting blurry, and the ground is blurry, the tire is blurry, and all they have to do is Photoshop out that bar that is connecting the car to the camera. And so for that one, they're actually doing the exact opposite, where they're slowing the shutter speed down so much that everything blurs except for the car that they're pushing by hand to make it look like it's going super fast.
You've just elevated the Q&A show to a Tim Wallace workshop. There's a good quick tip, actually. Follow Tim Wallace on social. He puts out so much cool stuff. He's just an amazing car photographer. So just look him up. He's one of those guys that shares everything. Super helpful. Darn nice fella. What about other kinds of wildlife? Actually, when I saw birds, I didn't go straight to the fastest thing on the planet, hummingbird. I was thinking of things like water birds flying, like a pelican, for instance, taking off. Maybe it's on the shore. Maybe it's flying.
Like, are we talking about like doves sitting on a wire?
I guess I'm just thinking back to one of the time. I was trying to think of when I've shot birds, and we were at kind of a, what's the word, estuary for birds, and there were big and small, just pretty exotic birds, and so we were far away with super zoom lenses and just doing the best to catch great gestures in the birds and stuff, and the shutter speeds in that case were kind of your basic rules. Like, they weren't moving too fast or anything. Usually maybe they would take off into flight, might be a little faster, where you would need something like more over 1/60th probably, depending if you're panning with it, but pretty simple with those. I would say with air shows probably the same, right? You'd want to do something like the car, where you're kind of moving with the planes so that the background can be in motion.
Yeah, so that all the smoke and everything coming out of the back of the plane is a stream rather than like solid smoke. Yeah, I agree. Like I think with this one, when we think about things that are that far away, you're also going to be using. You're not going to be shooting with like a 28 mil. You're going to be shooting it with a 100, 200, 400. Mm-hmm. So we were talking about this in our last episode, or not the Q&A show at last episode, but the last episode with
on the round table with
yes,
Bob and
you know how I am with names.
It was only the last one, so I can remember. That was Bob and Pi.
Yes. We were talking about the different rules, where it's a mathematical rule, where it is the inverse relationship to the focal length of your lens. So if you're shooting at a 400, then you want to shoot at 1/400th of a second as your slowest shutter speed, so you can handhold it properly without getting it blurry. So, when we're shooting something like a bird flying in the distance or a plane at an air show, you're probably going to be shooting at around a 400 mil or 200 mil, depending on what you have. So maybe the answer there is you're going to be shooting it at the inverse of your zoom.
Right. So your minimum might be that. Your minimum might be a fast speed, like with a 400, and you're using that rule, then you need 1/400th, and that's already pretty fast. So that might be the best way to handle it.
It might be.
I had another another situation that I have experienced was I was going to mention this when we were talking about Tamron, and because it went on a Sony, is I was shooting high school football like I do, and it's dark. It's really dark. They're high school fields, and some of them are not very well lit. Surprisingly, not well lit. And really quick side note is the guy had a Sony, a real pro. I'm just doing it as a athlete's parent shooting the games, but there was a actual professional at that kind of photography. I mean, I'm professional, but not at that. So, and he was right there, Facebooking his images right off of his phone. Right off of his camera. It's a little late for me when we're recording. He wasn't shooting with his phone; he was shooting with his Sony, and he was sending them to Facebook and stuff right from his Sony, and that was impressive. But
the phone tether, I can do that with my my Fuji, and it's wonderful.
He didn't even have to touch the phone that it was tethered to. It was just that makes me consider going to that. But then I also would rather focus on taking photos then, and then I'll send them later. But that's just a side note. I wanted to mention that. the shutter speed is tough in that situation because it's just dark, plain old dark. And I had, I was using my 70 to 200, which is a 2.8, and I don't have a 400 like those pro NFL photographers.
The $10,000 lens.
Right. So, but if anybody would want to loan it to me for the football season, then I could do reviews on it if that would be interesting to anyone. So the tough thing is just keeping the shutter speed fast enough, because you end up cranking up the ISO so high that you get into trouble with noise. So the slowest shutter speed you'd want to be, if we start going below 200th or so, you get blurry athletes, and that's not what I was there for. The ball can be a little blurry. Some parts of the scene can be a little blurry, but not the eyes, not the hands, So the luckily cameras these days can handle the high ISO. Plus, I shoot such large pixel size that you can kind of hide the noise, because when you reduce the size, that has a nice way of hiding the noise. So it just becomes a challenge of just managing the triangle. The ISO aperture is easy. You keep it just wide open because you want that blurred background, and then just finding a shutter speed that you can be happy with. So
what? It's funny that you mentioned that now. Like, I remember so I did this one shoot for a condo builder, and they wanted to have blurry people in the foreground in front of this building.
Yeah,
so
I like the style. I like the style a lot.
Right, it's a huge building. And I'm shooting from a half a block away. So there's people that are moving in the frame, and it's essentially, you capture the main shot of your building that you want. But before that or after that, you're just taking shots as people are going by at different shutter speeds to get them blurry. And so here's the thing. When a person is walking that half block away where they're really close to the building and really far away from me, I would take my shutter speed of, say, 1/5 of a second. Now, there could be a person that is walking that is closer to me, that is on my side of the block, that is going across the crosswalk. I want to get the same amount of blur on them that I did the other person that's way across the street, and to get them blurred at the same amount, I had to change my shutter speed to 1/25 of a second for them. So the closer that they were, I had to change it so that it was a faster shutter speed. The people that were farther away had to be a slower shutter speed. And then I had to merge all of those and blend those all together so that it looked like everyone was blurred just the same amount. But to do that,
off the top of my head, I would like to think about this first, but since it's not just me, there's other people listening.
Yeah.
Why? Do you know the math on that?
Oh, it is simply because when somebody is closer to you, it's like this. If you wave your hand in front of your face really fast, it crosses a whole wide range of visual space, right?
Oh, it's how far they're crossing within your scene. Yes, of course.
Yes.
I should have known that, yeah.
Yeah, so because if I'm waving my hand right now, what you're seeing on your monitor is probably a pretty small movement, but in front of my face, it's pretty fast. And so
when that person is on your side of the sidewalk, they're just covering more of the area you're letting them. What am I trying to say? More of your field of view.
Yes.
With less time compared to being far away, they're covering less of the field of view. Yeah.
Yes. So
that's really cool.
If anyone wants to see a picture of that, I can, I'll put a link in the show notes so that that goes directly to that image, so you can take a look at it, and you can see my blurry people.
I like that style for hotels, and I did some kind of fairly stock type stuff for some around in San Francisco. There's a lot of these offices that are always being rented out for big companies, and so we did some of those with the blurriness, and it saves you having to deal with model releases. It lets you use just about anyone as a model too, because you can have someone with whatever color you want on to fit the vision, and that's all I have to worry about, and just have them keep walking back and forth, and just keep the long shutter speed, the shutter open, and it's kind of a fun thing.
Oh yeah.
Okay, well, let's move. Let's what I said. Fold in question 2, which is
sure.
Stacy from New York says, and this is related. What about what's better, aperture priority or shutter priority? Aha.
Ooh.
Aha.
Okay, so Rob, have you used shutter priority ever?
Almost never.
I've never used it either. Aperture priority, I have, but I've never used shutter priority.
I've used shutter priority when I hand my camera to someone else. And I feel like that would be the best chance of them setting it right because of the situation. But I've almost always, in fact, we used to say, I think I got this at a get together where we were all talking about, someone said, my camera it's just always on. I just never turn it off. And I thought, yeah, I pretty much do that too, because with a DSLR, the battery lasts forever if you don't have your screen on, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and then I said, and mine's almost always an aperture priority because then I just have one dial to deal with and go,
Yep.
And if I can play with ISO pretty quickly if I need to, but pretty much I just use the aperture dial, and that's all I need to know. Let the camera do the rest. And that's for that, what I call walking around. Obviously, for most work that I do, I use manual. I choose none of your above, Stacy. I choose manual. But yeah, walking around like that we were mentioning, walking around with that super zoom on a vacation or something, camera's on. Well, maybe it wouldn't work with the Sony because that would run the battery faster. But if I have a DSLR, camera's on, aperture priority, my one dial can take care of almost everything. So yeah. I agree with you. Shutter priority, I don't really see the use of it most of the time.
No, me neither. It's funny. Like I use shutter priority all the time. Like I've got a Fuji X-T4 that I use for most of my playing around, just because I like the old style dials on it, and I like the color. And it was cheaper than the Sony that I wanted. Anyways, I digress. The thing about the aperture priority is that when you're in a situation where you're on vacation and you've got 3 kids running around and you got somebody saying, come on, let's get going all the time, it's easy to stick it in aperture priority and then just go. The other thing is, I know with my aperture priority, what I also like to do is I also like to set my maximum shutter speed, and then I can set a range for my auto ISO. So my auto ISO is set from 160 to 3200 on my Fuji, and then my maximum shutter speed is at 1/5 of a second, because it has the image stabilizer on it.
3-way stabilization or something like that.
Yeah, and so because it has that 5-axis stabilization, I believe.
5, all right. Wow.
Yeah, I think. I could be wrong. It could be just like 1, but no.
I don't think so. The newer cameras, I mean, mine has 3, and it's almost 10 years old.
They're pretty good. Like, so what I find is that keeping it at an aperture priority, where I keep it at f2, and then setting it so that the longest shutter speed is going to be around 1/5 of a second, and then my maximum ISO is at 3200. Then all of a sudden, I can pretty much shoot anything pretty much automatically, and I can hand my camera to my kids or to my extended family and say, here, just go take pictures. And it hasn't failed me yet. So that's my settings that I like.
And it wouldn't be you and I if we didn't throw in
it depends.
Well, that I was going to say at the outset that it depends, but what about the BLH? Is always one of mine. Just bracket like hell. Like going back again to
that was
a
Rick
vacation,
Salmon, wasn't it?
Going to a vacation, a very photographic spot. And I had my camera, it was a mirrorless, so it had lots of options, very fast, very, very fast frames per second. And I just left it set at 5 shots. I had the speed set at 3/20th, I think.
Yeah.
And it would just, anytime, if I was just taking pictures of the river in Prague or some buildings and just, those kinds of things, snaps, I would just rifle off 5 shots every time, and I wouldn't even worry about it because I was chasing a 2-year-old around. So yeah. That was a good way to go to it. when we say it depends, it just depends on so much. You know, if I'm in a professional situation, I'm thinking in a completely different mindset. Like there might even be, if there's lighting involved, then I'll definitely want to use manual because I really have a very specific plan if I'm using lights. And since they're not really my specialty, I have to be very, very careful and not let things to chance. So
yeah, no, I'm totally, I totally hear you, because work is like, you know, manual, do everything there. Everything else, it is spousal priority. You want to get everything done as quick as possible because I don't know if other photographers feel this, where because you're a professional photographer, when you take pictures on your family vacation, everyone thinks that you're working. And
to me, I find that they think that a photographer is supposed to just always get a great shot without waiting for the right moment, without waiting for the right light, without getting some X factor in there, like some great movement or a gesture of an animal or a person or waves or whatever, you know. It's like it's just easy. You just raise your camera and always get a great shot, but there's just so much that goes into it and you just can't do it that way.
Right? So, like, it's funny, like you remember the Jackie Chan movies from the 90s where at the end of every movie they showed all the outtakes of all the things that went wrong and all the fumbles and cutouts.
All the little fails.
Love that. Yeah, I love that because it shows that even Jackie Chan, as being a professional, missed a whole bunch of stuff. And it made me feel like, okay, I'm the professional photographer here, so even if we're on vacation and we're taking photos and I miss that incredibly important shot of when somebody did something and it was an incredible, beautiful moment and I missed it, I don't feel bad.
No, you know, you talk to all of the, pick any favorite or great or just highly respected photographer, and they'll tell you if they're out shooting in a day and they get one shot that they just love, that's a win. Just one is usually a win. Yeah. So keep that in mind too. It's just a lot of, when you talk about how to set the camera and sort of your strategy for the image, maybe or whatever, man, there's so many deliberate choices that go into it to grab a hold of it and make your vision happen. Now, if you're walking around if I'm walking around on aperture priority and I just luck into a shot that I'm very happy with, then there's a lot of luck involved, but I didn't deliberately set it up or anything. So that's when the aperture priority would come in. And again, shutter priority, I think, is like, if you hand it to somebody and you want to get them to take a picture of you making a cartwheel through the sprinkler and you want it on speed, you want it on shutter priority because you want it to be sharp. Okay, that's the only thing I can think of, because otherwise, if I have the camera, I would just still choose the aperture, noticing the speed to make sure it's what I want, but set it myself that way.
I think if I was going to go with shutter priority, I would instead put it into manual, set my shutter, set my aperture, and then just put my ISO at auto.
Well, you get in that situation of just changing light. Just when you move the camera around, could go, if you're outside and the sun is just hitting at different angles. And I can see why wanting to use the priority makes sense.
Yeah. Like I did that
I definitely do.
Like there was a certain time in my career way back where I actually thought, well, hey, I'm at the dog park every day. I might become my buddy John Sharp told me he wanted to make a company called the Dogographer, and we were going to go out to
no.
The Dogographer or the Dogographer. I can't remember how he wanted to get it done, but he wanted to set up a tent at the off-leash dog park and offered dog portraits, and we would just be there shooting. And we tried this once where we said, okay, well, let's see how this will actually work. And we got out a bunch of long lenses, and we did. I set it my 70-200 at a shutter speed of around 1/200th of a second at 2.8, and I made my ISO auto because it was one of those days where the clouds would come in and out and in and out. And so at one point it would be very bright, and then at another point it'd be very dark. And so at those settings, it was very easy. My ISO ranged anywhere from 100 to around is around 1600, depending on how much cloud coverage it was, or whether the dog was under the tree, or whether it was in full light. So that was an interesting one there, yeah.
I was just thinking back to when I was young and trying to do something similar in a tourist area. I guess that's a story for another time, because it failed. It didn't go anywhere. We'll tell you what. Let's throw those away.
All right.
Into the bin.
Next.
And talk about... I love this. You ready?
Sure.
This comes from BA in Cambridge. Like, oh, yeah. As a fan of the A-Team, that's good. That's good right
nice.
All right. This might make our brains explode, but what's the difference between a preset, a profile, and a LUT? L-U-T, a lookup table, for those that haven't heard of a LUT before.
Jeez.
In fact, that's kind of like GIF and GIF. It is LUT, right? Not
it's a LUT
or something. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I've only my understanding. Well, should we go in order? You want to?
Sure.
Would you like to take this one on? Or?
No, go ahead. Okay, so all right, so Ron, what is a preset?
Well, preset is something in now in the world of photography only. So if you're in Lightroom, or if you're in Photomatix, that we'll mention here in a minute, or you're in Capture One or any app, you can either acquire or create your own presets, and all it is just a set of settings. So with one click, you can add in. For me, when I import, it has a preset for lens profile, noise reduction. Really, that's about it, because I want to take control. But then I can use a preset to set my. If I want to choose a preset for a style, or I want to choose a preset in Photomatix that we used for HDR, you can start from one of the ones that are there for you, or you can save your own. So anyway, it's a set of settings. That's all it is. And I think most people are pretty aware of that. And I get asked about presets all the time from different directions. And it's always, where can I get presets? Where can I get presets? And I always like to say, if you get other people's presets, or if they come built in, which a lot of apps do, use them for ideas, but then create your own, because you want to create them for your own ways of doing things. But they're great for seeing other people's ideas and where you can get started. Compared to a profile, which now we're talking, to me, a profile is a style. It could even be a filter. Would you agree with that?
Well,
no, I'm sorry. There's one kind of profile, which is a lens profile.
Yeah, lens profiles and camera profiles.
Yeah, so, okay. You can profile the colors with. So with the lens profile is a wonderful item that's really built up over the last years, where every lens has some distortions in it, because that's how physics is. Even the fanciest lens are going to have some. The wider angle lenses are going to have more distortion. The higher quality ones will have less, but it'll still be there. But with a lens profile, it'll correct those. So like Rob and I, you and I, we shoot a lot of interiors, and so you want those straight walls and straight lines. So your lens on its own might have a little bit of barrel distortion, which is a little like bowed outward, or pin cushion, which has the lines coming in a little inward. And with adding the profile, it'll instantly fix those. So it's like fixing the imperfections of a lens, which are in all lenses, by software. Yeah, and it's wonderful. Yeah.
Now, I like the idea of looking at what the camera profiles are. Like, for example, like I'm going to talk about my Fuji again, because that's where I use most of my profiles, where even though I shoot in RAW, I can actually tell Lightroom or Photoshop or Adobe Camera Raw what film profile to use. So I can use an old style Velvia profile to make my images look more saturated, or Astia to make it look softer, or Chromachrome, classic chrome to make it a little bit less saturated and have that more movie kind of look there. And they've got Eterna, and it's wonderful. Like the Fuji's great lineup in that it shows all these various ways of making our photos look like the old classic film looks that you could get.
And
It's
Fujifilm had a very unique look back
yeah.
in the day. I used to shoot Fujifilm a lot, and it was you could really tell which ones came from that.
Yeah, and so I use those all the time. Like whenever I'm out shooting anything, and my kids in outdoors, I'm using Velvia all the time, and if I'm shooting them indoors, then it's Astia, and so yeah, it's neat to use those profiles. But this last one is an interesting one where BA is asking about a LUT, and a LUT is a lookup table, and that is essentially pretty much the same kind of thing, but for video.
But apparently it's growing into photography, which I didn't really realize until we got this question, and I did a quick little lookup. I did a quick little lookup. I didn't even intend that. I didn't even intend that. Yeah, I've never really been a video guy much, but I know lookup tables are used for color grading. So you kind of start with, I mean, it's basically kind of like starting with a raw. Like you have that log file that's, if you didn't do any color grading, it would be very flat, very boring. That's my understanding of how this is. And the lookup table, okay, do I have this right? That it really just means this color now equals this other color.
Pretty much. And it just changes how it comes through. Like, it's funny. I use lookup tables in Photoshop, not all the time. I would say I do it fairly often. I go and there's a certain part where, at the very bottom of your layers panel, you can go and create a new fill or adjustment layer. And when you go in there, it comes up with 3 different options as to the type of LUTs that you can load. And what I like using is there's one that is called, let's see now, I'm going into Photoshop right now to find it. It is day from night or night from day, and I don't know why. Oh, there it is. Nightfromday.cube. That is the 3D LUT that I load onto some of my exteriors as one step in editing my photos from daytime to twilight look.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so that's a good one there that I use for that. And the same thing, if I've got another image where I want to make it a little bit more artistic, I can pull a LUT and make it look like it is done with a Fuji film type look, and apply that profile onto a photo using a LUT. So yeah.
And if I understand, it's just really looking for in any it's just going to be a huge table, lookup table. It's going to be a huge table of numbers of our probably RGB values, and it's going to say anytime you find this value, replace it with this other value, so you get a different feel. And I'm just talking about it from a very high level because I haven't really done this. I thought it was really just for video, and when the question came in, we only do this once a month, so the question came in a little while ago, and I looked at. In fact, there's even I'll put a link in the show notes to. I found a Photofocus article from it's already a few years old, talking about using it in Lightroom already. So here's me missing that all the time. And I don't want to get too excited because sometimes I go, I'm discovered this whole new thing. And then frankly, I'm better at doing it myself another way, but we'll see. Yeah. But I can think of a few ideas of where I would like to just replace all of a certain value with all of another value. I hadn't thought of that's a bit of a trend in real estate, is to take a photo in the day, but then edit it so that it appears to be a twilight photo. And that sounds like a good situation for sky color or some of the the warmer lights.
Not only that, but it actually makes the entire house look darker, and it's a cool thing to do. You know what? I'm going to use that as my next YouTube channel, YouTube video.
What's your YouTube channel, Rob?
You know what? Just look for Rob Moroto on YouTube, and you should find me, I hope. There's not many videos on there yet because, like I said, it's summer vacation and I've got 3 kids, and it's just chaos, constant, utter chaos.
Well, try to enjoy the control. Try to enjoy the controlled chaos is kind of the way I look at it.
Right? Like I was telling my friend, it's like having 3 kids and looking after them while working from home on summer vacation is, well, at the very least, it gives me a reason to drink or justify my drinking.
Well, they say that the parents walking around during the day with the kids, they're really just looking forward until it's a acceptable time to open wine.
Yes.
Acceptable hour of the day. And
yes.
Hey, I've been there. I've been there. But yes, I just got off a vacation where me having a bartending background, when it becomes happy hour, everyone says, "Isn't it cocktail hour? Ron, where are you at? Get over." So I'm the one making my cocktails. So that's all right with me.
Wonderful.
And I did not get my camera out a single time. Just my iPhone. Took pictures of the phone, and I loved it. I brought along a camera. Didn't even touch it. I took a break.
You know, it's funny when
flew in last night. I had a job this morning. Just boom.
Yep, I did a job. God, I just finished 2 video jobs, and then I had a really, really beautiful home that was built by a luxury home builder, and wow. Yeah, it was nice, and but it was funny because before we shot that home, he said, "Okay, I've got this other home that I want you to preview first and get some ideas of, and give me some tips on what we need to do for staging." And so we went there, and I pulled out my cell phone, and he looks at me and goes, "Are you seriously taking photos with your cell phone?" I said, "Yes, this is a iPhone 13 Pro. It is the best cell phone camera out there right now, and I'm very particular about my cell phone photos too." But yeah, it's neat. It's there is something to be said about, you know, if you're a photographer, you will appreciate the technology that's also in these new cell phones because they are amazing. And you know, every phone, every camera has its place. And I can't remember who said this. They said the best camera to have is the one that you have in your hand.
Absolutely.
And it's true. You know, if an alien lands in your backyard and you have a cell phone in your hand, take the picture. Don't run inside to grab your DSLR. Just
you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. And if you don't have a camera on you, then you miss them. So
I'm amazed that you were able to bring in a Gretzky quote at this hour at this season.
That's kind of a everybody quote by now, isn't it?
Pretty much is. Yeah.
We should bring quotes to the show. Let's think about that.
Yeah, because I've been butchering all the ones that I usually do.
Well, there was a good one that I would butcher that I would bring up now. Darn it! I'll add it to the show notes. And anybody that's listening, I'll put it out there like bait to actually check the show notes.
Yes.
So let's segue into, speaking of bracketing like hell.
Yep.
You and I are both real estate photographers and similar things, and we use a lot of bracketed shots on purpose, very deliberately, manual mode. I meter the highlights, so like out the window. Then I meter the shadows, and then I've been doing it a while, so I can kind of just set the camera pretty quickly. Set it to bracket 5 shots at 2 spacing. If that's not enough, maybe add another shot. Anyway, capture that whole dynamic range. And then thanks to our sponsor, Photomatix, that Photomatix Pro I use to put them all together. So you get, for me anyway, I try to get about 75% to my final product for real estate, maybe even more, straight out of Photomatix, and then do a couple of steps in post-processing. And that'll probably include a preset. It'll probably include a profile. And I'm thinking it might start including a LUT because I have some ideas for workflows on that. But anyway, thanks for Photomatix for sponsoring. Look for Photomatix Pro 7 coming soon. And the biggest new feature is related to, well, it can be used by anybody. If you're well, if you do those vacation shots, there's a new way of doing batch processing that lets you see more of what you're doing as you're going and choosing the settings for each one.
Yep.
Again, us real estate photographers use that a lot. So hdrsoft.com, download, try for free. That's kind of the line, right?
Fall in love with it and buy it.
Yeah, I mean, wouldn't have, well, maybe I would have a different business if it weren't for that. Because when Photomatix came out, it was the only one of its kind. It was making people like me be able to do my kind of photography in a reasonable amount of time. And Photoshop,
I think I would have just given up.
What's that?
I think I would have just given up.
Well, I mean, I learned early on how to be a really good compositor, just for photos, not for now a compositor, you think of high-end film editing and stuff, but I'm just talking about like overlaying photos. And when I was doing that, there weren't even layers and layer masks yet. It was just having to erase one layer and use the other one.
Yep.
But anyway, yeah, the abilities of using HDR, or I'll throw in a quick tip, Fusion is a great way to just kind of get simpler, realistic results easier. You don't have to get the fake looking ones that it's kind of known for. But we don't need to go on too much about that. People ask questions, we'll answer them about that.
Yep.
When I was mentioning how I meter for the highlights and I meter for the shadows and then set the camera, if you're new to it, you can go hdrsoft.com/EV, and there's a super simple little calculator just to show you how to set the camera. It's available in an app for like $3 or something, but you can do it free on that little link I said. And if you do that a few times, you just get used to it, and then it becomes second nature. So
yeah, that's for sure.
Shall we do a little? We should wrap up.
We probably should.
We're going a little bit long, or we're hitting our normal time actually, I guess.
Yeah.
But let's tell everybody again where best to find you, Rob.
Yes, you can find me at robmoroto.com and on social media at Rob Moroto, pretty much anywhere. And you know what? If you are interested in real estate photography, then by all means go to my website, sign up, because I do have a course coming out. It's been delayed because, well, you know what? It was COVID for the last couple of years, and everything is just pushed back. Call it a supply chain issue, right? I'll charge more for the course and just blame it on inflation.
Your hosts have middle-aged guy schedules where we're really taking care of people and doing things in our own businesses and everything. But I have been looking at Rob's stuff as he creates it, just to give my feedback and say, hey, I have ideas here, whatever. And yeah, really good stuff here. I don't know if Rob's going to stick with my recommendation here, but I was telling him, don't try to be for every level. Try to be for a little bit, the person who's already going to take photography a little farther and not try to say it's for everyone. But I don't know. That's up to you, of course, because you want to appeal to a lot of people. But I think Rob's style takes things a little further than you see in typical courses. So that's my idea for that.
Well, thank you.
For me,
everyone should buy it.
Yes. Well, if you're not, if you're a total beginner, you won't be for long, right?
Oh, exactly. And Ron, what about you?
Let's keep it simple. RonPepper.com. I will get the latest things added to it pretty soon, but it still gives you an idea of the basic things I do. And besides that, I think we should say good night or good morning, depending when you're listening to this. We'll see you in August. We'll have a round table and another Q&A. As I always say, questions at photofocus.com. Send them, and we'll pick either our favorites or at least the ones that we can read and make sense out of. And like this time, if we get multiple things that are pretty similar, we'll wrap them into one and try to go over lots of different options. So thanks very much for listening, everybody. Until next month.